Då ska vi ta och förflytta oss ut i molnet och vi ska få lyssna på ett pass här nu om cloud security, om de responsibilities, de ansvaren som ni har som företagare, men också de möjligheterna, verktyg det finns och hur man kan adressera de här. And I'm going to introduce my two colleagues, Burak and Maria. Welcome to Kunskapsdagen.
Thank you very much,
Yeah?
Mons.
Yeah. And I hand over to you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's great to be here with you, and welcome back, everyone. It's also great to be here with Maria. She's a valuable colleague from our Malmö office, and she's joining by video today. She has also a fun fact to share with you regarding to that.
Yes, thank you. I'm traveling for work, so I'm joining you here on link from Chile, and I'm very excited to talk to you today about cloud security.
Yep. Thank you very much, and it's great to have you here, Maria, as well. And looking back to our topic, which is your responsibilities regarding to cloud security and the essential capabilities that you would need to address them. Of course, this is a broad and complex discussion that would take days, if not weeks, to cover comprehensively. For this reason, we will be focusing on the topics that we believe that are widely applicable and highly beneficial for most of the organizations that we are working with. Having said that, and as always, there is no one-size-fits-all. And every company's cloud and cloud security related requirements and challenges are unique to them, and they need to be handled individually. So if you have any further questions and would like to have any further discussions with us on the topics that we are presenting or the individual challenges that you are having, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. You will be able to find our communication details at the end of the presentation. And let's start with probably why you are also here with us today. Cloud use is in the agenda of individuals from all levels in the organization. And everyone is now aware of the financial, operational and technical benefits that the cloud is bringing in. Almost all of the companies we are engaging in today are already on their cloud journey somewhere. Some of them has recently started and trying to understand what to do, and some of them are already cloud native. But definitely everyone is doing something on the topic. And as the cloud use is increasing, so are the threats and risks associated with it. It's not possible to say that cloud is less secure than the legacy environments that you have. It's even eliminating some of the threats that you are exposed to. But of course, it's also bringing in the new ones. But of course, the challenges are different and they need to be properly addressed. When we look at the Global Digital Insights survey that we have performed earlier in the year, the executives are expecting the highest increase in attacks and incidents to occur on the cloud-related services. And by the way, there are some other good insights in the research, and I would highly recommend you to check and download the full report and go through it. And as we have been talking about the threats and risks associated with the cloud, it's important also to discuss how to handle them. And there is the cloud services are consumed as services, of course, and there is a general misconception that the cloud service provider is responsible of addressing these threats and risks, but that's not always the case. Maria, can you please help us to understand how is the responsibilities shared in the cloud, and is it possible and to what extent to avoid or transfer the security-related responsibilities that we have in the cloud?
Of course. The responsibilities and how they vary in the cloud is best explained by the shared responsibility model. Understanding this is key when comparing cloud security to the on-prem security that we are used to. It's always a shared responsibility between the provider and the user. However, it's important to remember the responsibility increases or decreases depending on the type of cloud service you use. You may go with infrastructure services where you use cloud-based compute, load balancers, network devices, and storage units. There are platform services like middleware systems or development environments. And lastly, there's also software services like business applications like CRMs and ERP systems that we're used to. While it's true that as you move towards the right-hand side of the chart, the responsibilities of the service provider increase, starting with the physical security and going up to platform security. But the task of managing accounts and identities and keeping your organization's data and intellectual property safe is always yours. Although there are some areas of the shared responsibility between you and the cloud provider, which is introducing an additional level of complexity to the whole setup. Now, you're probably familiar with the product family, Microsoft 365, where Microsoft provides its Outlook, Teams, and Microsoft Office suite as a software as a service. And even though Microsoft needs to provide these services securely, there are still more than 800 security-related configurations that you would need to consider. And with these configurations and also managing how much the services would be exposed both externally and internally, you will have a significant influence on its security. Now, that is why it's always shared. And however, it depends on the service that is being consumed. As the responsibility setup is hopefully more clear now, let us talk about the specific challenges that you will encounter on your journey to the cloud. We oftentimes talk about cloud transformation as a journey, as containing different stages, each with characteristic differences. Each stage in the cloud journey is driven with a specific business motivation and prioritizing individual outcomes, thus introducing different security requirements and challenges. And these stages are namely, as you can see here, exploration, where the journey is actually kicked off, and it starts with planning. Initially, you are cloud curious, and the piloting starts for the basic offerings and capabilities. The initial migration is performed with a limited scope, and by the end of this stage, it's expected that 20% of your IT expenses are expected to be related to the cloud. This is followed by adoption, where the center of gravity moves from on-premise systems and legacy environments towards cloud use. And the operating model is adjusted for specifically that. And finally, you're almost all in and become cloud native. So let's look at the individual stages in more detail. Starting off with the exploration phase, where the business and financial focus is on understanding what gains we can realize by setting the expectations and ambitions. Here, due diligence is performed to compare operational expenditure versus capital expenditure benefits. Business and IT is trying to understand what cloud can offer for the organization and for what expense. Now, it's important to remember that the expectation and ambitions for different industries vary. For example, healthcare industries would have other drivers than edtech industries. While on healthcare institutions, first question would go along the lines of, how can we keep our sensitive patient data secure and perform a specific calculation using cloud services? And edtech's first question would sound more like, how can we build an application with a low latency content delivery network that speeds up the web page load for our users that are placed all around the world? So the strategy work here is focusing on evaluating which applications and services would benefit most from moving to the cloud. It's also at this stage where service provider is identified after careful comparison. And in my own personal experience, in the cases I've been involved with, the evaluation primarily consists of comparing the prices, flexibility of cloud services, support system they might inherit, where the data centers are available geographically, and of course, one of the most important is security and privacy in the cloud. And yes, from a security perspective, at this stage, the security teams are reviewing the cloud security capabilities available in the current market. They are considering risk appetite of the organization and the associated costs. They try to understand the difference between what they used to do and what is potentially about to change for them. This is also when they realize that there are a lot of security offerings with very, very strong capabilities out there in the market. And after all of this exploring and planning comes the next stage. So let us move into the next phase. Now, one of the challenges faced in this particular stage, adoption, is the significant cultural change. It's not your average technology project. Change management has to be adapted to the new ways of working as the operating model and the organizational structure are about to change. So that means that when moving into a cloud environment, it usually means moving from the traditional waterfall mindset to a more agile way of working instead. So instead of silos with a single focus, with a single development team, for example, now there will be product teams handling everything from development, network operations, to database management themselves, which initially you might think is good as the activities are more centralized. However, there will now be more product teams doing everything themselves. So the risk of a more decentralized governance structure actually arises. Looking at the business and financial focus at this stage, it's primarily on realizing the benefits as soon as possible by rolling out within short agile sprints, which might mean temporarily embracing additional costs or accepting certain risks that you would normally consider larger than the organization's risk appetite. Now, it's also common that some business services are operating in their legacy systems at this stage while waiting on their turn to be migrated. And this is important because this is where the gap can widen between business and the security operations. It might be so that security cannot keep up with the transformation speed. Security teams are trying to adapt to cultural, strategic, and governance-related changes, while some applications are already run in the cloud, and some are yet to be migrated. So, in summary, security teams need to continue their operations for legacy systems, align their governance setup with new ways of working, support ongoing migration, and be available to secure operations for the ones that are already migrated. So with that said, maintaining standard level of security becomes a challenge. It will not be easy to define and enforce controls in a sustainable way for cloud infrastructure and applications. So let us jump into the last phase of the journey. Now, you're almost all set and floating in the clouds, but acknowledge that it is not easy to get to the final stage. You have now reached a place of self-organizing teams and implemented new ways of working as the delivery model have been adjusted, aiming to improve process efficiencies. The cultural change takes time to adjust to, and along the way, you needed to manage unexpected costs. And a lot of times, it was more complex and costlier than you aimed for. So the business and financial focus is now on cost optimization and cost reduction wherever possible. Similarly, security also needs to deal with the complex environment, partially overlapping tools or services, and generally they are lacking a single consolidated view of security. Thus, the possible misalignment of security controls across environments keeps it challenging, especially if the organization is operating in a multi-cloud environment or still maintaining some parts of legacy due to various reasons. It's even more challenging. So, Burak, what would you say would be needed for this transformation to be a more pleasant journey?
Thank you very much, Maria, and introducing us about the cloud journey. As this is a journey, security needs to be onboarded and early stages and should be keeping up with what's going on. And in order to do that, during the exploration phase, security needs to be aligned by assessing, strategizing, and developing a holistic compliance and security plan. During the adoption phase, security needs to be rolled out until you reach a fully secure cloud native state. And finally, when you are all in, security needs to evolve so that it can refine, enhance, and cultivate new opportunities for innovation. Of course, this needs to be done in a comprehensive way to cover the governance, risk compliance and privacy, and cybersecurity areas all together, so that there is an extensive security capabilities implemented throughout the journey. And let's start looking at each of them one by one. As you can see, there are many actions that you should take, even only for governance, and this is not an exhaustive list. For the sake of this presentation, we will be focusing on one of the crucial ones, which is the governance framework. Maria mentioned about the cultural change happening in the organization, and it has also a significant impact on the governance framework and the governance structure that you have in the organization. If you are familiar with the 3 lines of defense, which is introduced as part of the enterprise risk management, the first line, who owns and manages the risks and accountable of it, is completely changing, as also Maria briefly mentioned. Now we have product teams that are responsible of managing the risks and security threats associated with their products and features, which does not necessarily does not necessarily need to be familiar with the security controls that they need to apply. When we look at the second line of defense, which is in this context the security governance and compliance teams in the organization, they also need to adapt to the changing culture, changing operating model, and changing technology. So it's not easy. That's why defining a security strategy and a strong compliance governance framework is important to provide all of the stakeholders involved in the journey with a single perspective of roles and responsibilities and a single direction of how things will be handled. As this framework will hopefully be the foundations for your journey and influence the way you will be working with the cloud from going on, it should embrace the best practices and specifically the zero trust philosophy. Zero trust is a change of mindset, basically, from the perimeter-based security defenses, which you have in your legacy environment, into the cloud way of working, which more or less has no boundaries. Basically, zero trust states and expects that you should not trust anyone, any device, or any request that you are getting, and you should always verify all of them by assuming that a breach has already happened and what you are getting is malicious. If you can adopt the zero trust perspective into your governance framework and prepare and communicate it effectively, this will help you to establish the important security features like least privilege and strong authentication and segmentation and extended logging capabilities consistently across your cloud estate. So that's why it's critical to have this as early as possible and provide the teams with a single perspective. When we look at the risk, compliance, and privacy, and before starting to introduce our preferred topic, which are the controls, I like to mention that privacy is also a very important and a critical topic that we are hearing about. From the organizations that we are working with, and there are a lot of concerns how to handle privacy in the cloud. But it's also a topic by its own that would take days to discuss. Of course, we will not be able to handle that in this limited amount of time. But if you have any questions or concerns related to privacy in cloud, you may also reach us about those topics as well. And looking back to the topic that we want to introduce is the control structure. Maria mentioned that there could be, you could end up in working in a multi-cloud environment where you would be using a couple of cloud service providers together, or an hybrid cloud setup where you are using both your legacy and the cloud environments together in parallel. In those cases, it would be very challenging to maintain a standard level of security across your whole estate. Understanding the controls that can be leveraged in the cloud environment, how to implement them, and how to enforce and test them is something completely new for the security teams, and it should be reviewed properly in advance. And when it comes to testing, testing is not easy in legacy itself, and in cloud it's even more challenging. There will be autonomous product teams working in parallel, making changes on the cloud environment constantly and in a continuous way. And there will be deviations, and the compliance to the security controls should be monitored continuously and always verified. The good news is that there is a breed of tool called Cloud Security Posture Management, CSPM, that is specifically designed to help these purposes. And also the other good news is that major cloud service providers are providing CSPM offerings which you can leverage and consume as services as well. The challenging part is, again, especially if you are working in a multi-cloud or a hybrid cloud environment, these tools introduced by the cloud service providers are mostly effective in their native environments and fail to support the hybrid and multi-cloud setup. There are third-party tools, CSPM tools or services that you can consume in order to address this challenge and help you to define controls, first of all, in a standard and mapped way into the best practices like NIST and ISO and Cloud Security Alliance's Cloud Control Matrix. Enforce them in your cloud environments and in your legacy environments, and continuously monitor the compliance and identify the deviations. So our recommendation here is that start defining your controls as early as possible, and consider that you would need to enforce the same, preferably the same, or the similar controls across your cloud estates and the legacy environments. So you should be also prepared to be able to monitor them effectively in a sustainable manner. When we look at the cybersecurity, there are many things that can be done to address cybersecurity, and you also should be taking care of many things that cannot be listed in one single slide. For the sake of this presentation, we will be focusing on the secure development practices. We have picked this one because, as we have mentioned in the beginning, we want to focus on the widely applicable and the highly beneficial one. And the development practices are the capability that is helping you to get the maximum benefit out of your cloud migration. In order to have the maximum efficiency in the cloud, you would need to be as cloud native as possible. And you can achieve this only by adapting your existing applications. When you are converting them into the products and features, you might need to re-architect, re-platform, or rehost them. And this requires a lot of actions to be taken by your product teams. And they would be using the DevOps to do that. DevOps basically is based on agile principles and provides fast and reliable software delivery. With that, it provides or it aims to achieve cost reduction in delivery in parallel with improving the customer experience and the customer satisfaction. DevOps comes with capabilities like continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous testing, and it helps to address end-to-end deployment lifecycle and also the operations. It allows product teams to be much more independent and capable of doing what they want with the products and features they have, both with the infrastructure they are using and also the applications they are developing. And they are also flexible during the development phases and during the operations phases. As there is this expectation from the product teams in alignment with the business expectation of maximizing the benefits to be as efficient to be as efficient as possible and also as fast as possible, they tend to overlook the security requirements and security capabilities. That's why the security teams should enable and provide the product teams with secure DevOps practices, secure pipelines, and security tools, so that they will be, when they're starting their development or performing their operations, they will be providing and maintaining the minimum set of security controls is performed, and the standard security checks for the applications that are deployed on the cloud. So if we wrap up, we highly recommend, as part of the essential capabilities, we highly recommend to start with a strong governance framework, which considers the zero trust principles. Then we suggest you to think around the controls that you are going to have that will be extended across your cloud estate, and that they will need to be monitored and tested continuously. And finally, to provide the product teams with secure DevOps or DevSecOps tools and practices, so that you have the most critical points addressed. Having said that, as I said, even the other activities that you are seeing on the screen are only representation and not a full list, and there are many things you need to consider during your cloud journey. Having said that, for the closing remarks, we are with you again, Maria.
Thank you, Burak. And in conclusion, to conclude it all on a high level, cloud is a journey and so is cloud security. Cloud security should be properly positioned, but without being a blocker, and appreciated more of an enabler. Everyone has a responsibility in making the cloud secure, and the challenges differ as you move along and increase maturity. Now, lastly, as Burak mentioned in the beginning, we are very happy to hear from you and help you wherever you are in the journey and whatever your maturity might be. There's always actions to take.
Thank you.
Perfect. And thank you, Burak and Maria. So, Global Digital Trust Insights tell us that 70% of the business leaders are engaged in the cloud strategy. That's great. But it also means that 26% are not. Why is that?
Yes, actually that statistics is referring to the business leaders and the executives level. Yeah. It might not be in their agenda. No. We believe it should be, because as we have also mentioned during the presentation, the cloud has a significant and important tool for the companies to manage their costs, to improve their capabilities, and to become resilient in the world that we are living nowadays. For this reason, we of course suggest increased and effective use of cloud, and this would only be performed with the proper consideration by the business leaders and with their involvement.
It needs to get up on the agenda.
Yes, exactly.
I was thinking, Sweden is one of the most digitalized countries in the world, and we are like early adopters, very quickly to adapt new things. And I'm thinking, can that be a problem? Are we too naive just taking in new things?
No, of course not. Of course, I would answer this from a security perspective, which is the main topic. And the new things come with their security challenges and the security risks, of course, which are not widely tested. So from the security perspective, it's always challenging and risky to do so. But the new topics always comes with the new benefits, and the early adopters generally we see that has the most significant gain, and they can move along the race in the first places. You should be just careful by doing that. And security should be an enabler while you are adopting the new technologies or new capabilities, and should not be a blocker, and you should not avoid doing things that would be beneficial for your business only because of the security concerns, which can be handled and addressed.
I like how you worked, how you used the word enabler. Maria did it as well. Maria, are you still with us? I have a question for you as well. We had Helene Barnekow here earlier, the former CEO of Microsoft, and she told a story about when all information was on a small CD-ROM disk going around, and now you talking about this journey, and the goal is to go all in, 70% of the business in the cloud. And can you say like an average where companies are on this journey, the clients you work with, how long they have come on the journey?
So the clients that I've worked with are either on the exploration phase and need help to explore and compare the different cloud providers that we have out there, or they are already migrated. So I haven't really worked with any clients that are in the adoption phase yet. But even if they are still already migrated, there's still some parts from the adoption phase that still is not 100% set, like for example the operating model or their organizational structure.
Another thing I thought about was, does the internet have the capacity if all companies are all in?
Yes.
Yes, good. Easy, quick, clear answer.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, good. And of course, you've been touching on that. I mean, security feels like a key thing here, and trust as well.
Of course,
yeah.
Digital trust is what we are focusing on.
Yeah. But and the challenges here. I mean, you talked a little about ways of working, behaviors, culture. Is that the main things to get this really implemented in the business, using the cloud instead of the old ways?
Yeah. Yes, of course. I mean, when you deep dive into security topics, and you can get lost into the individual details. But eventually, all of these security changes and security requirements are driven with what's happening on the business side. It could be the business transformation going on. It could be the cultural changes going on that we have mentioned. It could be the operating model changes. And eventually, everything will end up in the plate of the security teams to adopt to support to. And yes, I mean, they tend to be security teams. Some of them generally tend to be more on the safe side and in the comfortable zone, and prefer to reject or deny the changes and so. But it's not the healthy and beneficial for business. So security teams also needs to be adopting and supporting the business needs.
Maria, last thing from you. I mean, if you're watching this now, you're thinking, okay, where should I start?
Start by, prioritizing how. I mean, you should start by definitely thinking about moving to the cloud if you're not on the cloud already, and you should start by prioritizing which applications you would consider be most beneficial to put in the cloud.
Great. You want to add anything?
Yes, this is how the business would like to start, of course. And as I said, the security would be supporting those. And from the security perspective, on top of that, you should be considering the privacy by design. While you are starting, you should be thinking about security by design, and you should be considering the best practices like zero trust that we mentioned while starting your journey. Maria mentioned that if you delay doing these things, I mean considering security, privacy, zero trust, or some other things that you need to do, then it will be late. And it will be much more costlier for you to fix it later, and you will have probably a bigger exposure to the security threats after your products and features are deployed to cloud and you're operational and you're, of course, more exposed.
Great, and as Maria and Burak said, they reach out to them. They will be gladly to discuss further. So really interesting, and I think say thank you to Maria and Burak. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.